Welcome to the HRIS Careers podcast with your host, Troy Wallace, a podcast for human resources information systems professionals to help you elevate your HRIS career. We always say no one gets into HRIS on purpose, but it sure is interesting to find out how they did. We interview your HRIS peers to find out how they got tricked into the industry and what lessons and tools they use to progress their careers along the way. We discuss industry trends, AI, and even talk candidly about all the most popular HRIS platforms. Just think of it as the closest bar just outside the entrance of your favorite HR technology conference. Now you get it. Welcome in. Welcome to the HRIS Careers podcast, recording as usual live from the beautiful studios in downtown Omaha, Nebraska. This is going to be a special episode. I really can't believe we've got the material to even do what we're calling the Best of HRIS Careers podcast 2024. But just counted it up, this will be our 17th episode of that. Probably 10 or 11 were with guests. And we certainly appreciate all the guests that come on and take their time. So we wanted to highlight those guests in this Best of episode. My special thanks to everyone that's featured on this podcast. We have Sylaj, which is now the CEO of Ascend, which is a UKG implementation firm. Bonnie Tinder of Raven Intelligence. Greg Laney. Nico Benenzon, of the CEO and co-founder of Human. Doug Hart of Threat Zero Solutions. Nick Day, the host of the Payroll Podcast. Mark Williams, the host of the Informed Podcast and LinkedIn Expert. Great guest Aubrey Morse, who is a certified change management professional and came on to talk about all things change management. Gabi Preston-Phypers, who is the queen of Boolean and an expert in recruitment. Bradley Rice, who showed us how to transfer skills potentially from HRIS to a career in Salesforce.com. And last but definitely not least, Tim Sackett, who is probably our most HR famous guest to date. Really appreciate those people that took the time to come on the podcast. We definitely have a good lineup shaping up for 2025. We've had some people step forward from the HRIS Careers community that are willing to be on the show, which is fantastic. Anything that you guys are willing to do to push us forward a little bit, which would be making sure to subscribe on YouTube, leaving us a review on any of the podcast platforms that you subscribe to, whether it's Apple or Spotify or iHeartRadio. It would be so much appreciated. Getting on the email list at HRISCareers.com or signing up for the job alerts. All of it's really appreciated, and we certainly appreciate it as we push into 2025 for what we believe will be another great year. Our first clip is appropriately our first guest on the show, Sylaj. He was, I'll say formally, CEO and founder of ATS Consulting, which is a UKG Consulting Partner. And he's had big news since he's been on the podcast. I don't know whether he acquired or merged with HRMS Solutions, another UKG partner, and they've become quite a force in the UKG consulting world. They were named 2024 UKG Partner of the Year, and the new name of the company is Ascend Incorporated.
And then obviously we brought in UKG. I spent a lot of time around the UKG folks. I spent a lot of time around the sales team. I would do a lot of calls for them. But really, when people ask me, why did you choose UKG versus some of those other, for me, it was, I chose Ultimate Software. I really chose the people, the culture they had built. Because, there's a lot of these HCM solutions for the most part. They offer a lot of the very similar things. And why do you choose one over the others? There's a lot of, tweaks. But for us, it was like, one, obviously the UKG did a lot of things. But for me, it was when I met Scott Scher, the founder and CEO of Ultimate Software, and I would ask him all the time, I was like, how come your people never leave? I mean, nobody left Ultimate Software. It was the way he approached things, the way he took care of his people, which then in return took care of their clients. When in return they took care of the shareholders. That was really for me the calling. Besides a lot of the other things, like, hey, I really wanted to create something, something special like Ultimate Software, and that was really my pivot point. Why I decided to do this and to start ATS. besides a few other small things.
Our next clip comes from Bonnie Tinder of Raven Intelligence.
Go through the journey of selecting a partner for an implementation of software to really know, to get a bird's eye view as to what partners are the best and what partners are the most trustworthy and deliver the best results for customers. And we provide all of that information based on reviews, right? Voice of customer, the only source of information that we have is based upon the reviews that other customers leave about their implementation and partner experience. And those are very good and close data sources, independent data sources by which to make a decision. So that is the idea of Raven. We are a peer review site at our core, but what we help to do is customers make a really good data-driven decision about a partner by knowing what the experience of other customers has been.
So let's go on to question number 4. So when people are giving a review, what is probably the most useful information that people or reviewers are actually leaving out or they're not covering in their reviews? It's just something you're reading these and you're like, I wish they would talk about this, this, and this.
Yep. I would say there's really 2 things. So there's a field that we have called lessons learned. And the best reviews are those that really detail both positive and negative or challenges that they had and how they might have overcome them. So that would be number 1. And so getting customers to not rush through and provide that information. We're always competing for people's time and attention. And, if a customer spends a minute or 2 documenting that, again, that goes so far in helping others. So I would say lessons learned is a big one. The second one is partner strengths. And we ask them to just detail what was unique or different about the partner. What could they have not lived without that their partner brought? And we provide that information back to the partners. And it's amazing how much they are using that information to sort of inform the sales. Here's what customers are saying about us behind our back. And those are the very best pieces of feedback.
Our next set of clips are from Greg Laney, author of the book Transforming HR, A Journey Through HRIS Implementation. Now, Greg was one of the first people, viewers, listeners to comment on the YouTube page, which we certainly appreciate. He was a big fan of what we call AI Troy, which is a version of me that's cantankerous, recurring character on the show. If you're interested, AI Troy interviews me on episode 1 of the podcast. This is him talking about the number 1 HR metric that he would use if he could only use one, and also giving some props to AI Troy. All right, so we're going to put some fake time on the fake clock, and we are going to go to question number 1. If you could use only one HR analytics metric for the rest of your career, what would it be?
HR analytics metric. Okay, so there's a lot of metrics that could be used. Probably, so the one that sticks, they can all be inflated. And what's that quote? There are 3 types of lies, damn lies, and statistics. So totally understand that. And so this goes with a grain of salt. The one thing that I think that really sticks out for organization is quick terms. Someone that joins an organization and then leaves within the first year. And the reason for that is that plays to several different components of an organization. It plays to the recruiting component. Is the talent acquisition team doing the right job selling and marketing and branding the position in the company to bring the right people in? B, are they bringing the right people in? And then C, are the managers and the HR business partners doing the right thing to keep the talent that's brought in fully engaged? I mean, it's not a perfect analytic by any means, but if I had just one, that's probably one that I would keep as an option.
And number one, I hate to miss out on the fun stuff. So I'm going to take you right into what we call the lightning round. We may do an abbreviated thing. So usually 3 to 5 questions. I call it the lightning round. I ask the questions rapidly, but your answers do not have to be rapid.
Okay.
All right.
Does AI Troy get to participate in this?
AI Troy doesn't tell me. He inspires me during the edit.
Okay.
And he will sometimes make an appearance.
Okay. I like that AI Troy. He's a good guy.
He's good. He's got all his facts in order, and I know he wants to replace me at some point.
I hear you.
Real Troy, are you getting the hint? Greg obviously wants me to do the lightning round. The next clip is from Nico Benenzon. Nico was really interesting. He was the co-founder of Humand, just a really interesting guy and how he got into the business. Also, they've definitely had some news since he's been on. They one of their, I'll call it competitors, Facebook Workplace has decided to sunset the product, which has really opened up a lot for them. And I know that they've hired a couple executives from Facebook that were on that Facebook Workplace team. So a lot of exciting stuff for Nico. In this clip, he talks a little bit about them becoming a $1 billion company and more, and also his experience being part of Y Combinator. What was the biggest benefit to being in Y Combinator? Was it the networking? Did it open up other doors to customers? What was the big lever that helped you being in that program?
Well, I would say a lot. I would say I never heard anyone talking about how YC wasn't transforming to their journey. YC helped a lot with fundraising, to raising funds. We right now we have investors like the co-founder of Dropbox, the co-founder of Lyft.com, the co-founder of Purcell. We have really great funds and angel investors backing us, and the first initial exposure was YC. Those people knew us because we were at YC, and they are the same network, basically. So that's when YC helps a lot. Also, they prepare you a lot to scale as a company, to learn how to... You have literally $1 billion founders helping you directly to think how to think about fundraising, about building product, about building a go-to-market. So you get help from the very best people who build huge software companies.
That's some diverse activity. When you sell Human for $1 billion, you have a private plane, you can do that all in one day. Right.
I believe Human has much more potential than that.
This next clip is from Doug Hart from Threat Zero Solutions at threatzero.org. Doug was another great guest, definitely a little out of the ordinary for the podcast, but was really insightful. And this clip is me asking the question of whether HR data, in his opinion, can be predictive of violence in the workplace.
Yeah. And so what we're trying to do actually is not predict violence, because nobody has a crystal ball. And a good analogy is if, let's say, you go to a cardiologist for a checkup, and he may say, look, you've got very high cholesterol, you have a genetic history of heart disease, you're morbidly obese, you your salt intake is too high, and so on and so on and so on. What that person is doing is he's identifying these risks that exist within your life. Now, he may say you're at a very high risk of having a heart-related incident, but the doctor can't predict when, and in fact, if that will actually occur. And so what we're trying to do in workplace violence prevention is make everyone in the organization aware of how violence evolves. And you're correct that it often is a process of months or years. About 60% of the time, the first instance of concerning behavior is noticed 25 months or more in advance of an attack. So we have a lot of time. The other key thing is that, a lot of the threats that organizations face are internal threats from the people that work within those organizations. Now, that's not true for all organizations. There are some organizations that deal with customers, clients, and patients, and so they have an external interaction with people that can present a threat. But any organization with employees is exposed to an internal threat. And I think you'd be very surprised to see how many of these tragedies are actually associated with people who are amongst us, who are known to us. And so really the core philosophy is, because oftentimes the people who go down this dark pathway and ultimately act violently are known to us and viewable to us, we have a baseline for their behavior. And what we're really looking for, and I can list the behaviors for you, that's not difficult to do, but what we're really targeting is, what do we recognize that a deviation in a negative way from a baseline that we have established with that person? And if I know you and I know your work performance and your attendance at work and your personality, and I see significant changes from that, that's an indicator that you could be contemplating violence, but it's also an indicator that you may be contemplating self-harm. It may be an indicator that you're suffering from severe anxiety or depression or other things that are impacting your work performance. It may be that you're the victim of harassment or bullying. That's what's great about this program, is the violence is sort of the extreme end of the spectrum, but there's a day-to-day piece of this that HR people deal with all the time, and that is just people who are overwhelmed by the circumstances in their lives. And all of these things are manifest by deviations in known behaviors. And so that's the foundation of violence prevention, is that we know through evidence and research what those behaviors are. We know how many behaviors a person displays, and we know where they display them, which is very often in the workplace. We know who sees them, which is their coworkers, and we know how to intercede to mitigate violence. And that's the wonderful benefit of a workplace violence prevention program that should exist in all organizations in this day and age, which unfortunately it exists in only a small fraction of the organizations that exist.
This next clip is with Nick Day. He is the host of the Payroll Podcast, which, in my opinion, is one of the best dedicated shows out there. He also runs the firm JGA Recruitment. And in this clip, he's giving us his tips on best practices for recruiting in the HRIS and payroll space.
It's a great question. If you don't mind, I'd like to take it back a step, because I think there's the part that's missed in the process. So it was a great article written today by Max van der Klispersink, which many of your listeners may know, who's confirmed that he did a survey, and 55% of the payroll leaders he spoke to said they have a real issue or challenges trying to recruit payroll talent, right? So in going back to your question very quickly, we're already in the engagement phase, but recruitment starts in the sourcing phase. When I say engagement, we're talking about enticing people. And I think this is where there's confusion, and this is where the challenge comes in, where a lot of organizations will say, hey, we don't need to use an external agency. And this is not a sell for me, giving you an idea where the landscape is, right? Maybe you're a hiring manager. You may say, I don't even need my internal talent team. I know payroll, so I can do this myself, right? And they'll go to their market. They'll use their LinkedIn network. They may go post an advert somewhere, and they'll look at the response that comes back. If you look at that as phase one, or as the simplest way of going to market as a hiring manager, typically the people that apply to your advert are going to be active job seekers, number one. So you're not necessarily going to be able to unearth or entice, in your words, the people that may be the best fit culturally, behaviorally, skill-wise, because they're already happy in employment and they're not even considering, and you can't unlock those people. So your search is going to be limited to your own network, and your network is going to be based on people you've worked with, not necessarily job seekers. So it's quite a limited way of recruiting, but you could certainly find people that way. A lot of people will go to phase two and they'll say, okay, we've got an internal talent team in our business, so we're going to utilize those professionals to find people for us. Internal talent have an incredibly difficult role that's often misunderstood by stakeholders. So an internal talent person has got to find talent for every part of that organization often. they've got to be experts in every sector, which of course is impossible. So I've got a procurement director saying I need a procurement specialist. I've got an FD saying I need someone in my account team. I've got a payroll leader saying I need a payroll person. A marketing, they've got to manage all those different roles, and it's impossible for them to build a network that's niche enough to find the best talent in any of those sectors individually. But they have a broader network to tap into for finding, maybe first layer people and slightly more people than a hiring manager. And this lies into the question you just asked me now: how do we entice people? So I would argue that hiring managers and talent people can often find talent, but that's only half the battle. The real game, the real challenge in recruitment isn't just finding people, it's then engaging with them. How do we get that individual to engage with us, to show genuine interest in the vacancy that we want to put forward to them? So back to your question, how do we make something stand out? I mean, it's a whole podcast in itself. You've got EVPs, you've got certain things that will resonate with certain people and others. But ultimately, when you've been immersed in the space as you have for 30 years, Troy, right? You know that if a hiring manager came to you with a challenge, you would know the intricacies of that role inside and out. The job spec is part of it. You wouldn't probably even need the job spec. You'd ask some intelligent questions. You'd know immediately what kind of person will fit that role. I guess we've got to that point in what I do, having done this for 22 years. When we get a job spec on my team, we kind of understand the nuances that role will require and the potential levers we'll need to press to find the right person. And we've got many levers we can press and many talent pools we can delve into. So we're not restricted to LinkedIn. We've got online channels, we've got offline channels, we can use WhatsApp groups, we've got podcast audiences and so on and so forth. So I think it starts with a really thorough understanding of the industry. If you gave me a procurement role, I'd be no better than an internal talent person or hiring manager. It's not my niche. I wouldn't know where to start. So I'd do the same things everyone else does. I'd place an advert. I'd probably write a text that isn't that enticing because I wouldn't know what appeals to those people. And I'd look on LinkedIn and I may or may not get lucky. Doesn't mean I can't place the position, but I'm kind of shooting fish in a barrel a little bit. When it comes to payroll, I know the industry inside and out, so we know which levers to pull. That make sense?
This clip is with Mark Williams. He is the host of the Informed podcast and the LinkedIn expert. So I know his episode just came out, but man, he just has the best radio voice. And we ended up pairing it up with some music, and it just went so nicely together. I just want to play the whole clip again. So again, check out the whole episode, but this is Mark Williams, host of the Informed podcast and LinkedIn expert.
And whenever you're analyzing what LinkedIn are likely to do or the reasons why they have done something, always think, how does this enhance them selling more recruiter products? Just comment, right? Easy. Well, anybody can write congratulations. Anybody can write great post, but none of that actually really helps you. Proper commenting, actually saying something that adds value, is not easy, but that's where the real value is.
This next clip is with Aubrey Morse. She shared all things change management. She is a CCMP, which is a certified change management professional. She also, we discovered during the call, is ProSci certified, which is another change management certification that you can get. In this clip, she describes how they work together. Enjoy this clip from Aubrey Morse. She also just got some great news. She works for the University of Michigan and was just named the chairperson of their IT committee, which I believe is a big deal at the University of Michigan. So enjoy.
So once I completed the first round of the ProSci trainings, it really kind of opened my eyes. So the first levels, you basically complete a 3-day training course on the fundamentals of change management. And that was really the first time that I was exposed to a very formal process of change management. Because, no matter what position you're currently in or what job you're currently, in, everyone does change management every day, right? Things are always changing in one way or another. And we're all handling change management in different ways and in different perspectives. ProSci was the first time that I actually saw how these principles are applied to kind of broaden my understanding of how change management can take place. And so that really interested me in trying to learn more about, how can I formalize how I approach change management to help me succeed in various implementations or different projects, or even in my career aspirations. And so I completed another course through ProSci called the Masterclass series, which was wonderful. They had experts from all over the organization that were, involved in change management one way or another that would present and kind of talk about their experiences. And then they would kind of provide a lot of content from, what they've gathered over the years, which was excellent. And so it was really after I invested quite a lot of time in attending different webinars from the ACMP. I attended I remember the name of it. It was an ACMP conference in South Carolina, where that was the first time I was in a room with like 100 or so change managers. Because as you mentioned before, change management is a relatively new concept in a lot of organizations. It may have been done informally in a lot of ways, but, more recently, it is becoming more and more formalized in the way that's expected to be handled. And so attending this conference, it really enabled me to, see the potential for where this kind of career choice was going and kind of helped me to learn and network with other individuals. And the people that I did meet at that conference, a lot of them had already had their CCMP, and they had told me kind of, what it had or how it had helped them in their careers or their current roles and stuff like that. So that's when I kind of got the interest in kind of taking on that next step.
This next clip is with Gabi Preston-Phypers. She is the founder of Tooled Up Raccoons, a Boolean search tool, and so much more. Definitely check out the whole episode, but we just took the clip from her cold open in the episode because there's so many good little nuggets that we strung together. And enjoy this clip from Gabi Preston-Phypers.
I just looked at my daughter and was like, do you know what? Screw the lot of them. I'm not going to turn up into the world and be a fraction of me, because if I do that, I'm telling my daughter that it's okay for people to kind of squash you a little bit so that you can conform to their world. All of a sudden, I went in thinking I was going to be like, yeah, here comes Gabi, let's go and let's do everything. Just kind of like, actually, could you just be like 1% of who you are? Actually, I don't want to be 1% of Gabi. I want to be 100% of Gabi. That if you are looking at picking up a recruiter to look for candidates for you, if they don't use the word Boolean and you can't see a good solid Boolean they've used, you shouldn't be paying them 25% for anything, right? They need to know how to hunt. Otherwise, they're useless to you because they're not seeing true talent pools. Logically, there is a lot of data in your hands, in your possession, about what these candidates may or may not call themselves, the words they use, but those words don't align with your filters, which means you had a huge disconnect. And the technology stack actually almost put like that nice kind of cuddle around the candidate discovery process. So it's about giving each recruiter the power of knowledge to be dangerous. And then included in that is then the technology stack we've developed to be able to do all this unique research on keywords, variations, translating Boolean strings, executing Boolean strings on different platforms. So it's very much about how do you combine the power of knowledge with the sophistication and efficiency of technology to actually help your team become the best hunters they can be.
This clip is with Bradley Rice. He is the founder of Talent Stacker. Now, this is a little bit of a divergence from HRIS, but I thought it was interesting because, sometimes you may want to get out of the HRIS business and want to know where your skills are transferable. And we thought a career in Salesforce was one of those platforms that a lot of things you do in HRIS would be similar to the skills that you need to be successful in the Salesforce platform. In this clip, Bradley's talking a little bit about how he made his transition into Salesforce and a couple of the similarities of our skill sets in HRIS versus Salesforce.
I got my degree. I did well. I paid attention. I was going to hop out into the real world and they were going to be like, what? You have a degree? Just let me throw money at you. This is amazing. It didn't work that way.
I wish it did.
A lot of people are like, is Salesforce a cult? Like, is this a thing? And I think the mascots probably don't help with not looking like a cult. Right. Oh, you're absolutely right. He's not responding well. There's no follow-up question. Right. I'm getting no feedback. I must be in trouble. So I threw in the wrench on that. Anytime you're in the business of automating processes and working with people, you're in a really a good place to transfer those skills over into a Salesforce career.
This next clip is with Tim Sackett, who is likely our most HR famous guest to date. He was gracious enough to come on the podcast and also was very gracious with his time when I was out at the HR Technology Conference in Las Vegas this year, so really appreciative of that. And in this clip, he's talking a little bit about the tech stack for the rest of us as it relates to recruiting, and then also his story about the enormous hug. You're just going to have to listen. In your chapter that addresses, you call it the tech stack for the rest of us. And this is really talking really about talent acquisition. Yeah. Yep. Part of the tech stack. You use the sentence, if you suck at recruiting, the only thing technology will do is make you suck faster.
Exactly. It's one of my favorite quotes, and it's been used a lot. And thankfully, I think for the most part, I get attributed for it because it's, whether you're talking about TA tech or HR tech, the technology isn't necessarily the foundation of better HR or better TA. It's having really great processes and people, and then the technology layered in is like the holy grail of making this really good. But you can't have a broken process or a really bad HR policy and think that the technology is going to fix it. It actually just, whatever you're doing bad is just going to do it a lot faster and more efficient. And so I try to tell people that all the time. Like, and what we always tend to believe is like, most of the time I'll get a call from like a TA leader or CHRO who doesn't think recruiting is going well for them. And they'll say, well, we just need a new ATS. And I'm like, you probably don't. I mean, you might, right? Like you might have something that's dated, but first let's take a look at, are you using your technology at a superior level? Like, I think you should become super users of your technology first before you buy anything new. First, because a lot of times they'll say, oh, well, we're currently using ATS A. And I'm thinking, well, it's not a bad ATS. And they're like, well, we think we should go to B. And I'm like, okay, also not a bad ATS, but 90% of what they do is the same. So what are you really missing from A to B? And they can't tell you. And so I'm like, well, first, how about you become a super user of technology A, and then tell me what it really is lacking from a feature standpoint that you believe you need, and then let's go find that. Or in a lot of times, the actual technology they're using actually has the feature set they want. They just have never turned it on, or they never implemented it correctly, or something like that. And so it's so interesting, and I think that ultimately, what I usually find again is they'll go, well, they won't use the technology we have. Well, that's not a technology problem. That's a you problem, right? That's a design problem, a process problem. It's not necessarily a technology problem. So that's where I'm always like, I'm just a fan of saying, let's be good at what we do and then allow the technology to make us even better. So I've actually spoken 4 or 5 times in Cayman. And years ago, I did a post about workplace hugging. And so I was in Cayman and I'm doing the workplace hug rules. And this is, again, like 6, 7, 8 years ago. And I asked for a volunteer. And I'm 5'7", 170 pounds. I had a Canadian woman that had to be 6'4", 320 be my partner to hug. And she devoured me into her. Literally picked me off the ground. The audience loved it. They came unglued. They thought it was the funniest thing they've ever seen. So it was great theater from that standpoint.
Please tell me you have pictures.
I'm sure somebody does. Like I didn't. I was on stage. I was like engulfed in this woman having a giant hug.
And in closing, we're going to leave you with the blooper of the year. Well, at least the only one that we recorded and kept. I'm sure there's quite a few others during the year. We do quite a bit of editing on these episodes to make it bearable for you. But anyways, this was with Mark Williams, recorded within the last month or so. But yeah, sometimes things just don't go as planned. But again, we appreciate everybody listening. Please go to HRISCareers.com and get on the email list or sign up to get job alerts. We certainly appreciate everybody listening, and we'll see you next year. Let's talk about let's talk about we'll cut this, Mark, but somebody decided to come down to my bathroom and flush the toilet. Maybe we'll leave that in.
Brilliant. I can hear it this end.
Yeah, there we go. Oh boy.